Hello, I hope this video finds you well. In this second video of our piano scale helper, we are going to write the component of code that's going to capture the information from these two keys by writing some JavaScript. This is going to be a relatively short number of lines that we write, but there's a lot of big ideas here we want to make sure we're grabbing onto. So again, what happens is when I select a scale here, so minor, and let's do the B minor scale, and I hit submit, it maps out the keys for us on the keyboard. But it has to grab that information. So we're going to explore how that works. And with that, let's dive in. So I've made a file here called Piano Scale 2, and I'm currently displaying it right here on my page. You can see it. Piano Scale 2 is right there. Pull that up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take my stage 1 and highlight it all. Oops. I'm going to highlight it all. We're going to copy it. We're going to come into here and we're going to paste it. And I'm going to save it. So when I come in here, I should load it, and it's exactly the same as stage 1. Perfect. Okay, maybe we'll shrink this a little bit too, just to kind of, it's awful. We can zoom it now, stay zoomed in. Okay, so now, because we're going to do some JavaScript, I'm going to actually pull up the developer tool. So if I click on those three buttons, and I come down to more tools, we have developer tools, and those pop up, and now I have access to them. It's really important you familiarize yourself with these developer tools. So you're going to learn that you can write all sorts of JavaScript in here. So if I write the word document, for example, you'll see how the whole page lights up. What document does, when I hit enter, that returns an object which contains all of the HTML code. So if I expand this, there it is. And I can actually go through and look at each part. So it comes with the body, there's the piano scale generator, p tag, there's the label, there's the select ID, and this is what we want. So what I want to do is I want to capture this element. But before I do that, I have to actually set it up so that when I click the button, something happens. And that's what we're going to do first. So let's just clear this up. There we go. So let's come in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I have to bind a function to this button to make an event-driven program. So if I just come into my script here and I do console.log at the very start, console.log, and I log running, and I save this, and then I reload this, watch down here in the console. I get the word running. And that's because when I run this, it automatically runs the JavaScript here. So it hits that running and off it goes. But again, I want the code to run only when I click the button. So to do this, what I do is I add an onClick command to this. And I say onClick, and you're going to run a function called calculate. And now when I click this button, the event is a click of the button. And what it does is it runs this function. So if I save this, I come back into here and I reload this, and then I click the button, I get an error. I get an error because I have bound this function to the calculate, I bound this button to the calculate function. But the problem is there's no function called calculate. So we have to write that. I'm going to come all the way down here to the bottom of my script, and I'm going to write function calculate. And calculate, the name of the function is calculate, it takes no parameters. So now if I do something like console.log and I log calculating, and I save this, and I come back into here, and I reload it, and I press the submit button, calculate. So every time I hit submit, it's running that. And that's perfect. So the question is, how do I access, which option is selected? So to do this, we're going to use some JavaScript. And so remember I talked about this, how I write the word document? So document is going to capture your entire web page. So if I hit document, I press enter, that is the entire HTML page. And if I expand this, I can kind of scroll through it. And you can also do this by inspecting elements. And inside the body, and I come in here, this is that option box. So you see how it's lit up at the top when I hover over it? So watch right here. So I want to get this object, and to do it I'm going to use the ID, and we know the ID is scale select. So let's come down to the bottom here and do this. Document dot get element by ID, and then we're going to pass it a parameter scale select. And when I hit enter now, see how it returns that, and now I access that element and I can do what I want with it. But we want to do that in our code. So I'm going to come back into my function, and I'm going to say var, and this variable is going to be called sSelect. That's the variable that I'll do. And I'm going to actually make a variable that's going to reference that object on my web page. So I say document, which accesses all of the HTML, .get element by ID, and then the ID is scale type, scale select. And now if I do console.log sselect and save this, and let's refresh this, what should happen when I submit the button? I should see that object down here. When I talk about the object, I mean the widget. So I hit submit, and there it is. Okay, but I don't just want this object. I want to know if it's major or minor. And if you come back up when we make this, you see that the options have values 1 and 2. So I want to capture that value, and then I'm going to know if the value is 1, it's a major, and if the value is 2, it's a minor. So we're going to come back down here, and we're going to write the next line of code. So we're going to make another variable, and I'm going to call this S-type. So this means scale type. I'm using some convention that makes sense to me, and presumably I've worked with a team and come up with this. And so I'm going to say sselect, because that is the selection box, dot, and it turns out I can access the options by going dot options. So sselect is the object I'm working with. I'm going to select the options, and then I open a bracket and I say sselect dot selected index. And then I'm going to want the value. Let's go console.log s-type. And I imagine you're looking at this if you're, a relatively new programmer and saying, oh my gosh, how do you memorize this? And I don't. What you learn to do is read the code and understand what it's doing step by step. And I actually got this from W3 Schools. But so what's happening is, let's go through this again. This is accessing the object on the screen by using their ID. And then what I do is I take that object and I go to the options. And because this object is some predefined thing that all web developers know about, and then I select an index value. This is just like a list, because this select, if we take a look at it back on the page, it has a number of options. It is 2. So if I come back here, I'm going to say whatever the selected index is, and that just is a way of saying which selected is actively displayed on the screen, and I want you to get the value. So if I save this now, and I come back in here, and I reload this, if I hit submit, I get 1 because I'm on a major. If I hit submit, I get 2 because I'm on a minor. So now I have values that I can make a decision around. And let's do this with this key. So if I come back into here, well, if we take a look at this, let's actually do it this way again. So let's clear this. Let's pull up our document and press enter. And then let's kind of scroll through this until we get the one with the musical keys in it. So if I scroll through here, I see scale key right there. So the ID for this is scale key. Okay, so come back to my code, and I'll just comment that out, and I'll say var, and let's call this nselect for note select equals document dot get element by ID. And what's the ID here? Let's remind myself again. It was scale key. So we're going to say scale key, and then I'm going to say var ntype equals, and again, it's this long kind of code here, so I'm going to say in this case nselect, because I want to take that nselect object dot, and I want to go look at the options, and I want the specific option at nselect dot selected index dot value. And now this should capture that value. So in the next one, I'm going to say something like console, not commented, console.log, and we're going to log the ntype. Let's just get rid of that for now. So if I save this, and I come in here and I reload this, now since A is select, if I hit submit, oh, I get an error. What's this? Cannot read property 0. So let's track this together. So piano scale 2, line 113. So I've made a mistake here. So let's take a closer look at this line. So we have ntype, we have nselect, 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 and then we have option. Oh, I forgot an S. Options. So it's really important you take a moment and read that. So let's reload this. Let's do a drop down, and I'm going to say B, hit submit, and I get 2. So let's come back in here. Now let's scroll up to the top and let's take a look, and I see B, sure enough, is in value to. And so now, because I know the mapping of this, I'm able to predict both the key, well, like I know what the key is and whether it's a major or minor scale. And so in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to write a really simple algorithm to kind of calculate all the notes in the scale that we want to work from. And for this, I'm going to do a little bit of musical theory. And the trick here is to think about, if you don't have any musical theory, you have to get enough knowledge that you can do what's being asked, but not get bogged down in detail. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about some music stuff. And again, you want to make sure you get enough that you can do this. I will say it's so much fun learning music, and taking some time to do it is incredible, so I encourage you to do that as well. And with that, have a great day.